Rather than finding the hair, I like to say that evidentially the hair found me. I can't vouch for every extant, supposed lock of Washington's hair. But to give you some idea of this, I have a map that I give that shows more than 100 institutions in the United States today that have supposed locks of George Washington's hair. In particular, as I was reading through the Washington family's correspondence, and in George Washington's extended family in the years after his death, they began to parcel out locks of his hair that they had kept from before he died, both intramurally within the family, which wasn't, at one level, all that surprising for the time period. People would hold back some of that kind of stuff as mementos. But the scale, again, became striking in a hurry. They were parceling it out in finer and finer increments, and fairly clearly even using it as a tool or an incentive of political patronage to give the nod to people that they happened to support. Here we are in St. Louis, and we are about 2.5 miles away from a lock of Washington's hair that is held at the Missouri Historical Society, one that's actually reasonably provenanced. Now, again, some of these must not be the real artifact, but there are many. The real story here is that there are many that are actually quite convincingly provenance, and such that you can look at the correspondence coming and going from major players within the Washington family to see that this really happened. So there is, for example, a lock of Washington's hair held to this day by the Masons in a temple in Boston, and that was given directly by Martha Washington. The paper trail there is solid from that time, and the provenance even to this time. And Paul Revere himself made a silver urn just for the purpose of holding that artifact, which is how it's still kept today. Eliza Wadsworth is an interesting case. She was a woman in Maine whose father, Peleg Wadsworth, was a U.S. congressman. And when George Washington died in December of 1799, Eliza, with most of the country, went into mourning, essentially. People felt this at a very deep and personal level, and she found herself wanting some incarnate relic of the great man. And so she wrote a letter to her father and asked if, using his connections, he might be able to secure for her a lock of Washington's hair. Now, in the 18th century and going into the 19th century, this was not quite as bizarre as it might sound today, because people exchanged locks of hair. We, might send selfies to each other today, or years ago, maybe school pictures. Her father was well connected, and he managed to get in touch with Tobias Lear, the surviving secretary of George Washington. Lear asked Martha Washington. She was all for it. And they, in fact, forwarded a lock of hair through Tobias to Eliza. And she recorded that she opened the parcel with veneration and awe, she said, and could not believe her great fortune that she had this souvenir of the pater patriae, the father of his country, George Washington himself. And she hoped that one day she would find a way to make it possible for thousands who didn't have those kinds of connections to see the relic of the great man. And so later in her life, she donated it to a historical society, the State Historical Society in Maine, where it still exists today. And in fact, thousands have been able to see and perhaps enjoy gazing at that lock.